It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this plenary session of Capacity Building in Higher Education at VET First Grade College, collaborated with NAC and Sikkim University. This session is a crucial part of our gathering, setting tone for deeper discussions and intellectual exchange. We are honored to have with us Professor Sourav Mukherji, whose expertise and insights will undoubtedly enrich our understanding of bridging the gap, approaches to capacity building of faculty members in higher education institutions. Sir, your presence is truly a privilege and we eagerly look forward to your perspectives. Heartily welcome to you, sir. Now next, let me welcome Professor H.S. Ashok, Honorary Professor, CES. Sir, wholeheartedly welcome to you, sir. Next, let me welcome our delegates, faculty members, students, and all the participants. Thank you for being here. Cordial welcome to you all. Professor Sourav Mukherji is a faculty at IIM Bangalore. His expertise lies in designing organizational structures, processes, and cultures that align with the strategic objectives. He offers a popular MOOC, designing organizations for competitive advantage. His research focuses on inclusive business models that address the needs of the poor in a financially sustainable way. He has authored several case studies on social enterprises, many published by Harvard Business Publishers, recognized for his contributions. He received the UNDP Fellowship for Research in Inclusive Business Models and the Will Grow Fellowship for Social Entrepreneurship. At IIMB, he served as Dean of Academic Programs, led MBA placements, secured EQUIS accreditation, mentioned IIM Visakhapatnam, won multiple teaching awards, and volunteers with Runners High to support education for underprivileged children. Let us open our minds to new ideas, challenge existing notions, and make this session a productive and enlightening experience. With this, I now invite Professor Sourav Mukherji to take the session forward. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Meeting my needs so quickly. Thank you. So what I have here is largely based on my experience in teaching in a management school. So if you are not in a management school, then please make those connections because it may not be 100% applicable to what I will be talking about. I look at the role of faculty members in Institute of Higher Education in three categories. We are teachers, so that's a very important part. As you would have seen, there is a lot of emphasis on research that has come along. So research is also a very important component. And then finally, if we are building an institution, if we are running an academic institution, then we will have to get involved in academic administration, and I will also talk about that. So based on my experience, whether you are an individual or whether you are an institutional leader, there is always need for balancing all of these three. Largely, teaching is what earns us the revenue. It gets us our students. It makes us popular among the students. Research is what which is important for us to set up our credibility among our peer group. The institute gets a lot of recognition based on the kind of research its faculty members are doing. And finally, academic administration is like governing ourselves. If we want an institute where we would come to love, where we would love coming to, then we should also take responsibilities as far as the academic administration is concerned. You can also call it academic leadership. Now, the important part to keep in mind is that all of these are also dependent by the needs of the institution. Some institution may be a lot more focused on teaching, so naturally the teaching component becomes very important there. Some institutions might be largely research driven, so the second component becomes very important, and academic administration will have to accordingly adjust whether you focus on teaching, whether you focus on research, and so on and so forth. It will also determine the career progression of the faculty members. So does your institute encourage a teaching line? Does your institute encourage a research line? What kind of incentive systems are there for you to take up academic administration? All of these three are needed, but when I'm looking at an individual's career, then which one is more important, which one is? I already have got one. Yeah, somebody gave me. Yeah, thank you. Yep. So there are specific set of competencies which are needed to do each of these three. Right? The set of competency that you need to be a good teacher in class may not be the same as what you need to become a researcher. And to manage an institution means understanding people, managing human resources, sometimes dealing with politics, dealing with expectation of larger stakeholders who may be your board members, which may be the government, maybe the larger society. So the point here is that not all of us are equally competent in all of that. See, so hence that's also a choice which one has to carefully make, matching your own set of competencies with what is necessary for the institution and what is it that the institution also wants from you, right? So these are three of the very broad categories I would look at, and I have based my presentation on that. Now, I have been with IIM Bangalore for the last now 21 years and a few more months. So I have seen this institute evolve. We have also grown in size. 21 years ago when I joined the institution, then the total size of the MBA program would have been about 300, so 150, 160 students in each of the year. Today the MBA program has grown 4 times in size. There are a lot of other programs. We have also picked up something called digital. So we have a very big initiative going on, massive online open courses with digital courses. So the scope of the activities have increased as well as the scale of activities. So naturally, institute has evolved quite a lot. So the 3 categories which I talked about in terms of teaching, research and academic administration, I wanted to think about how they have evolved with the growth of the institution as well as with the focus of the leadership or the focus of the management. I have broadly divided it into 3 buckets. And the first phase is between 2003 and 2008 when I was a kind of a junior faculty, just about joined. Then 2008 to 2015 where I was somewhere in the middle. Actually, it also coincides with the kind of promotions I'm talking about. So maybe from an assistant professor, I have become an associate professor. That's the 2008 to 2015. And 2015 to today, I'm in the role of a professor. And for some reason, this kind of matches with my visualization of how the institute has evolved over a period of time, or what are some of the changes that has happened. And I want to take you through that. So first, if I look at teaching, then when we joined the institute, there was a very high emphasis on teaching. So the professors who were adored, who were admired, who were very well known, were all known to be fantastic teachers. And then naturally the focus was on them. What do they do in class? They are the primary ones who were mentoring the younger faculty who were joining in. We were also thinking about how do we increase our programs, how do we do executive education, because that's a very key revenue earner for us. So it was a very teaching focused institute at that point of time. However, as far as research is concerned, there wasn't too much focus on research in those days. Research was always kind of, it is good to have, right? If you are good in research, if you're writing some papers, very nice. But there was nothing like a journal classification, where would you need to publish? There was nothing like a tenure track. There was no point system given to each one of us in terms of publication. That was the whole idea. And many of us were encouraged to join administration very early. So we were asked to join committees. There were this admission committee, there was placement committee, there were other kind of institutional committees. So it was very self-governing. It has always remained very self-governing. But we were encouraged to join the administration at a very early stage because it was viewed as something that was very necessary for us growing up. And since my specialization has been organization design, I was quite naturally attracted to it, because when you join administration, then you understand that what are the organizational dynamics that happens, what are the changes that are happening all around. So this was the first phase of my career at IIM Bangalore. If I look at 2008 to 2015, and some of these all changes primarily happened because there was a leadership change. And when the leadership changed, then sometimes the focus also changed. And I will more focus on the middle part first, that there was gradually a very strong emphasis on research and publication. Because we realized that we were somewhere there, number one, number two in India, we were doing quite well. But globally, we were not much recognized. And people's aspiration was that we have to be globally recognized. Now, as far as number of students are concerned, we have so much students from India that we will never have a lot of international students. If you look at a Harvard Business School or a London Business School, they measure themselves by saying that how many international students do you have? We don't have that, because we have enough students coming from India itself. So how do you compete with the best international management institutions? And that is where the research papers, the international rankings, all of those become very important. And as a consequence, our institution changed considerably. There was a very heavy focus on research. We introduced the tenure track. So we said that all our promotions are linked to the kind of research that you are doing, the kind of publication that you are doing. And it had its good impact. It had its impact because we were gradually then showing ourselves up in international rankings. There is Financial Times ranking, which is quite considered to be a good standard. We also went for international accreditation. Just as we have national accreditation, we have international accreditation. And when we went for international accreditation, they were very happy with us, the kind of stuff that we were doing. But they were saying that you are falling a little short on research and publication. They also said you are falling a little short on internationalization because you don't have many international students. And we said, sorry, look at India. India has so much of diversity that our diversity is much more than what you will have in Europe. So you should look at internationalization in a very different way. But certainly it was felt that if you have to be globally recognized, then you have to have a very high degree of focus on research. And that was brought in. But what also probably inadvertently happened was that then the importance of the other two went down. So when you are focusing so much on research, writing papers, collecting data, etc., then teaching was almost like, okay, you just go and finish it and come. Likewise, young faculty were not then encouraged to join administration. It was almost like if you have nothing better to do, then come and join administration. Otherwise, you don't do administration. Your primary responsibility is research. And after that, just do the basics that is needed for teaching. In fact, the way we then structured our recruitment was that first 6 years will be tenure track. And during that time, we were very conscious that since people will be very focused on doing their research, we will not give them too much of teaching load. We will not expect them that they will go and do executive programs. Neither are we expecting them to go and do any kind of academic administration, including becoming members of committees. Now, over a period of time, and that is where I look at third period, which is 2015 till today, we realize that while emphasis on research is good, it should not come at the cost of teaching. And gradually we brought back the emphasis on teaching. Now, doing two things at the same time is always very difficult. It is relatively easier to focus on one thing. And if you notice what has happened in the first 2 years was that you focus on either research or teaching. But now we are saying that no, because the context of us in India is that our primary source of revenue comes from teaching. Unlike an US school, US business school, where there are a lot of endowments that come from rich donors, philanthropists, alumni, etc., our primary source of revenue are fees or doing executive education programs. So if you are not good in teaching, if you are not putting attention on teaching, then the value of the school will go down. People will not come and appreciate you. The larger society will not appreciate, the students will not appreciate you. So we went about and said that, well, how do we also train our teachers to be good teachers? And that's what we went and set up something called a Center for Teaching and Learning. We realized that during the PhD program, there is a lot of emphasis on research. So people are learning how to be good researchers. But when they come to a school, the first thing that they're asked to do is teaching. And there is no method of telling them how to be a good teacher. all of us learn teaching by learning by doing, right? We go to the class, we have our own notions, and then we try something out. Some of us are lucky to be getting good feedback. Some of us are not so lucky. We may be not getting good feedback from students. And then the people who are not getting good feedback are often lost, saying, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Why is it that I am unable to actually satisfy the learning needs of the students? So we said, no, there are a lot of research already happening in different centers world over. We want to replicate that. So we set up the Center for Teaching and Learning. We realized that earning revenue is very critical for institutes' financial sustainability. So we must open up channels for earning revenue, which means we must also open up new programs. And finally, if we are going back to our alumni to ask for money, then they will always remember the kind of experience that they had in the school. The papers that we publish is for very limited audience. It is for the scholarly community. Most of our students will not be reading our papers. But they will remember how they were taught in class. They will remember whether the teacher was sympathetic, whether they got something useful from the class, which they can apply in real life, right? So all of these realizations made us that, no, we will have to bring back once again, focus on teaching without diluting what we are doing in research, right? So that is the whole idea. That time also told us that administration is also the backbone of the organization. We need strong administrators, good leaders to ensure that we are not moving from one side to another, right? This whole experience of once having a focus on research, once having a focus on teaching, all of these are okay, maybe you should do once, but then we need experienced people who can drive the institute, who can satisfy, who can understand the demands of the stakeholders. And naturally today there is good importance given on administration also. We are consciously thinking about who are those talented people. Not everybody will be keen to become academic leaders. Maybe not everybody will have the talent to become academic leaders. But who are those people who have a orientation towards leadership? Who are the ones who may be able to handle the tension that come with that? Identify them early and then bring them on board. Girish, can you just slightly adjust the focus, because I think it's a little bit getting cut out. You look at the word induction. Yeah. Okay. So, this is what has been the evolution of IIM Bangalore looks through my eyes. It's very subjective. Maybe another colleague of mine, if he comes and looks at it, he might look at it in a very different way. But what is it about teaching, research and academic administration that I have learned from it, and this is what I want to share with you. So, as far as our school is concerned, this is what we want it to be, that we want it to be always research-led. But when we talk about research, then one of the important things that we also want to address is that it has to be impactful. Right? As I said that when we are looking at very high-end journals, you will sometimes find that there is a trade-off between rigor and relevance. So the rigor of the research and how relevant is the conclusion of the research. And in general, the focus of high-end journals are on the rigor. So they really do not want to compromise on the rigor part. Sometimes you might wonder that, okay, after having read such a big paper, is it really contributing to the body of knowledge? But the rigor part is almost cannot be compromised when you are talking about a high-end journal. But we also need to keep in mind that we are sitting in India and our problems are very complex and complicated. There are lots and lots of problems out there. The whole model of journal publication is derived from pure sciences quite a lot, where the rigor is very critical, right? Because there are very clear right and wrong answers. But if you're talking about disciplines like sociology or even management, there aren't very clear right and wrong answers in many cases. So that sensitivity to the context matters quite a bit. What is possible in, say, United States or Brazil cannot be replicated always in India. And India has so much of this unique problem. So I don't want my research or my school's research as a whole to be not sensitive to the context, right? So hence, the relevance part becomes very important. When you're talking to any stakeholders, whether you're talking to a business person or if you talk to the government who kind of asks us about policy research, then they will always be worried, they will always be valuing the impact of the research, that okay, are you giving me some answers to a problem that we are grappling with, rather than worrying about the rigor part of it. Rigor part is important, but that they will accept as given, saying okay, you are coming, you are a professor, you know how to do research, so you are going to give me output and answer which is rigorous, but what is the use of it? Can you help me solve the problem, right? So that problem solving orientation is something that I need to have, and hence once again it's a matter of balance. Research by itself is important for me as a teacher because things are changing and I need to understand what is changing, and if I have to walk into the class and be relevant to a student, then I have to be on top of research, right? I mean, the last 1 year would have told you that the impact of technology is touching our academic institutions so heavily. People are talking about artificial intelligence. So even if you are not teaching information technology or computer science, you've got to understand roughly what artificial intelligence can do and what, more importantly, it cannot do. Then last few months has been a lot of talk about large language models, and you would have yourself seen maybe some of the impact in class. Now and it's not last few months, it's actually a couple of years, I guess, that when you are giving an assignment to students, the possibility is that they will first go to a large language model like a ChatGPT and get the answer out of that. It's a reality. You can't resist it. You can't say, no, don't go to ChatGPT, right? You will have to live with it. And you will have to structure your questions, etc., in a manner so that it's okay even if they go to ChatGPT, I can evaluate their learning capabilities. You have to bring that conversation into the class. If you are not bringing that conversation into the class, then students will not consider you to be updated. Doesn't matter how scholarly you are, right? So we have to be constantly on our feet even to stay on the same place. That's what they were talking about in Alice in Wonderland. So what are my suggestions maybe for capacity building as far as building capacity of research? So that is absolutely critical, that as academic institutes, we build our capacity among our faculty colleagues for doing our research. Now, how can we do that? And these are some of the things. I think there has to be a very strong grounding in methods, both qualitative as well as quantitative. There are journals which publish qualitative studies, there are journals which publish quantitative studies, but as academicians, as scholars, we have to be very conversant about the minimum level of research methods that is expected at any top quality journal. Otherwise, you may have a great idea, you may be able to solve fantastic problems, but you will not be able to communicate in the way scholars would like to look at that. Since English is not our first language and most of the famous journals are in English, I am not in support of that, but that is unfortunately the situation. Unless and until we can create top class journals in vernacular language, be it in Kannada, be it in Odia or Hindi, we will have to follow the rules of the English world. And since English is not our natural language, we are not often very good in the way of writing. So we have to also develop our English writing skills. How do you make argument? How do you make just one argument in one paragraph? How does the storyline flow through, right? Some of these skills we have to develop if we will have to be accepted internationally. I have a lot of students who are very good in methods, who are very good researchers, but they are not necessarily good in writing ability. That's why many of their papers get rejected, because they are unable to express what they have already done or what they have in their mind. We have to kind of find ways and means to overcome that. International collaborations help because from multiple perspectives. One is today many papers, many journals want data which comes from multiple contexts. International collaboration also opens up your mind. The way you look at a problem may be very different from someone who is maybe sitting in Ghana or sitting in Switzerland and looking at the same problem, right? So that is always helpful. How do you develop this international collaboration? You will have to show up in meetings, in conferences, in symposiums, in workshops, in national conferences if the international crowd is coming here, or international conferences. We also have many academicians world over. There are a lot of academicians in US universities, so you find your way. But I have found that if you are doing good research and you want to see your research in good quality journals, then international collaboration can be very useful. For those of you who are quantitative researchers, access to data set becomes very important. Unfortunately, in India, we do not have a lot of data sets. In US, if you look at any quantitative researchers, the first question they will ask you is, what is the data set on which you are talking about? Bangalore has what? Maybe about now 5,000 entrepreneurial organizations, startups. But where do we get the data about them? When did they start? What is their, how have they raised money? What has been their valuation? What is their, number of people? Unless and until you have this data, how will you do any kind of analysis? Thankfully, things are changing. Things are changing. Things are getting better. I'm talking about entrepreneurship. There is a database called TrackScan, which actually track all of this stuff. But more and more of these needs to come along. Otherwise, we will not have the necessary tools to do our research. We have the tools to do the data analysis, but if the data quality is not good, then where will we do our analysis? Even our census data is now being digitalized, and with lot of digital data coming in, life will become better. But you have to be always on the lookout that what are those data sets, what are those clean data sets, and sometimes you may have to develop your capability to even clean up the data sets, because you will never get data in the kind of form that you want it to be. So that's an important capability that you need to develop. And the other source of knowing what is happening is our industry colleagues, right? So, and this is one area which I keep on talking about everywhere, that we have very little industry-academia collaboration. And the blame is on both sides. Industry people are very impatient. They will talk to you and they want a solution on Monday. And for them, contribution to knowledge is not important. They would say, can you solve the problem? That is great. We as scholars are just the other way around. We take our time to do things, right? We will say, no, let me look at the data. Let me understand what is there. Can you give me more data? I am not focused on solving problem, but I am more focused on contributing to the body of knowledge. So we come from two different worlds. Both of us will have to make a few moves forward. But keep in mind that industry can give us a lot of good data. And industry can experiment quite a lot. I always say that in management, it is the industry folks who are doing the experimentation for us. And if we can look at their data, then we can actually write our research papers. We can actually do a lot of research. But I think it's at the handshake of industrial people, managers, leaders there, and us, where we can get a lot of data. And very good quality research can actually come from that. So that will be my take on how to build research capability in your organization, in your institution. My second pillar is that of teaching. And in teaching, I realized that when you talk about teaching, the focus is almost on you. You are the teacher, you want to teach. You have certain knowledge, you want to come and give to the other people. That is what I call as a supply view of teaching. Whereas what you need to actually do is take a learning view of the whole academic system. And moment I'm talking of a learning view, you go over to the other side and you are now putting on the mindset of your student. And that's exactly what I call as the demand view of academics or demand view of learning. So when I first started my teaching career, I was coming from an industry. I had been a consultant for a couple of years. So I was pretty confident about my slides. I said, well, there's a subject to be taught, strategy has to be taught. I have 35 slides, I have 90 minutes, I will go into the class and teach. And as I keep on covering my slides one after another, students will ask questions, I will give some explanation. And after 1 hour, I will suddenly realize, oh, I have only covered 15 slides, but I have another 15 slides to cover and I have only 15 minutes. So I will speed up. It is almost like I have to finish those 30 slides before the end of the class. Over a period of time, I realized that that is not the right way to do things, because I am keeping the spotlight on myself. It's almost like I have to give the content to the student, but how do I know the student is actually learning? So learning involves maybe slowly telling them what is happening, thinking about how they are moving. And you are talking about large class size. There are 75 people in the class. Some of them are very smart. They will learn very fast. Some of them may be smarter, but they learn very slowly. And you have to cater to the whole audience, right? So now I have started thinking, saying that the number of slides are not important at all. Surely, if you're running a course, you will have to have some boundaries. You will say, oh, within these 20 sessions or 10 sessions, I will have to cover the course. But when you are inside the class, think from a student's perspective, that what I am doing, what is the impact that it is creating on the student. And so that naturally makes us think about how people learn. So teaching for me is a very supply view of looking at education. I want to focus on the demand view, which is about the learning. But that means that I have to understand how people learn. How do students learn? Why are they sitting in the class in the first level? Right? The most important part about learning is about your motivation. Otherwise, it will not even, my mother used to say, I told you something, it went into your left ear and came out of your right ear. And she was very angry with it. Later on, I told her that, that is not too bad, because at least it went through. For many of my students, it comes to the left and goes away from the left itself. Okay? Why is that so? Because I have probably not understood why the student is sitting in the class. Learning is never easy, by the way. Learning is a difficult job. Just as picking up any skills is difficult. Tomorrow, if I ask you to start playing tennis, it will be very difficult for you. Same with learning. Nothing is learned very easily in life. But we have to understand what is the motivation. Why is it that the student is sitting in the class? Maybe he or she is concerned about the job, which is the right thing to do for him or her. So now I have to link what I am teaching to that objective, that to get your job, this becomes important. Unless and until I am able to make that connection, they will say, oh, this is one more class to attend. Let me just get over with it. And then I will figure out whether some questions will come from it. I will look at some question paper. I will maybe ask some student. These are stuff which all of us have done at some point of your time, etc. Right? But think about it, right? And now you are the teacher, they are the students. So I need to learn as much as possible. I need to relate to their context, with which increasing age will become even more difficult. One of my favorite profs, he used to say that, it is very unfair for the teacher that your age keeps on increasing, but the student's age never increases. Because every year you are walking into a class again with the 23-year-old, right? So he or she is in a new generation and you have grown old. But I have to keep myself updated. I have to understand why is it that they are constantly on the social media? Why is it that they are constantly on their mobile phone? And they are like my kids. They are eventually will be my grandkids. Probably I will retire by that time, right? So that relation becomes very important, because learning is also about a relation that you are establishing with your student. And you will not think about all of these unless and until you are empathizing with the student. I think that becomes very important. So these are now I can go on for one full day talking to you about learning, but let me tell you that human beings learn through these three methods. We learn through observation, we learn through experience, and we learn by doing some things ourselves, right? So that is the experimentation part of it. But cutting across all of these are these two. Merely observing is not enabling you to learn. You have to reflect after you have observed. If you have got an experience, unless and until you reflect, you will not learn from your experience. And all of these are important because we have a mental model for everything in our mind. And that's what we call as conceptualization. Even simple things like driving, playing, cooking, growing up for children. For all of these, you ask yourself, you have already formed a theory, what works, what doesn't work. And learning happens when you are making that theory a little better. Learning happens when you realize that, oh, I thought this will work, but it did not work. So I must have made a mistake. What should I do better? So there are multiple mental models. Maybe there are thousands of them. Maybe there is one of them. We haven't figured it out yet. But there are effectively mental models which only will get enriched if I am motivated. And if I am seeing something, that should add to the conceptualization. My worldview has to get enriched, right? So it's a very complex process that is happening here, and we still don't know how it happens. Because they are saying that there are billions of neurons which are constantly firing to tell me what exactly is happening. Now, I can't even imagine what does it mean by a million, forget about billion, right? So there is a complex process which we have not understood. But somehow it works, and somehow it is the most sophisticated information processing system that we have created. Since we do not know about it, we will have to make some broad approximations. But Today there is very interesting research, and again research which has been made accessible for people like you and me to understand, right? Neuroscience research you and me will not understand, at least I don't understand. But they have been also made such that people can understand. A lot of stuff is coming out in terms of how people learn. And I think we must pay attention to that and accordingly tailor our learning based on it, right? Very simple things like, they call it as chunking. Human beings learn through stories. We are always looking at patterns. Moment something comes, you are putting it into a pattern. Now that is very useful for learning, but that's also very dangerous because the stories are very sticky in our mind. And sometimes what happens is you don't want that story to change. You love that story, unconsciously you hang on to that story. Any data that comes and challenges the story, you just discount it and say, no, that's not relevant. This is the one which is important, right? So there are a lot of good writings that has happened based on very good research on biases, that why human beings are biased and what are the pluses and the negatives of being biased, etc., right? So good work happening there. I would encourage you to have a look at all of those. How do I build my capacity as far as learning is concerned? I think we need to now focus on workshops which are on teaching methods, which are on learning, which are on course design, which are on evaluation methods. There is already a lot of research that has happened in these areas. Let us not reinvent the wheel. Let us look at those research and understand what has happened. After that, you may be contextualizing it. You might say, well, this is not applicable to me. I will apply it at a different context. Harvard Business School, they did one study among their students and found out that none of their toppers are actually women. All their toppers in the business school are men, boys. They said this is very strange because the incoming class has a very good distribution of ladies and gentlemen. And the ladies who come here and the gentlemen who come here are very smart. There's nothing to say that why should the boys be performing better than the girls? They understood that there is a bias that must be operating among the teachers to make it so skewed. So then they instituted a study. And what they found out was in Harvard Business School, since it's a business school and they teach through a lot of case studies, significant number of marks are given for class participation. In fact, there are courses like strategy where 50% of marks comes from class participation. And guess what happens in class participation? It is the boys, the men who kind of keep on fighting with each other a lot more. Women, more decent, right? They will make their point and probably keep quiet. Now, how do they evaluate that? After the class, the teacher is going back and giving marks. And in that mind, he or she remembers more the talkative kind, the boys who have been shouting and fighting in the class rather than the girls who have made their point and not taking that. So that if you notice, the girls are losing out on class participation marks. They are doing very well in exams, but all of them are competitive, right? The differences are very less. So girls assist, and they did the data analysis of that. They came and showed their faculty members that we have looked at class participation marks that all of you have given over the last 10 years in some 50 courses, and see what is the pattern you are seeing. If you split gender-wise, you will find that girls typically scoring a lot less. And the faculty members, being very smart, realized that this is a bias that they are carrying, and it cannot be that girls are not good in class participation, girls are not good students. And then they started training themselves to say that, okay, we have to be very sensitive about the quality of participation. And it does not make sense for the faculty member to come back and give marks because the same faculty member cannot be teaching as well as remembering at the same time. So they put in teaching assistants in class who will do the marking, who will try to remember interventions made by the students, and then when they come back to the office, they sit with the professor, they discuss that for this intervention I gave so and so X marks, for this intervention I don't think it was valuable, I gave them less marks. Now imagine the effort that goes into this, the sincerity of the organization. That's why they are Harvard Business School, right? That they put in that effort, they understand that through data, and then they come and try to correct some of the biases which may have unconsciously crept into the whole process. I think we need to have an orientation for that, right? Constantly looking at how are we being as teachers, are we being fair, is there some systematic, what we would say, unfairness happening in class, and how can we make ourselves better? Tools, right? Today you cannot talk about teaching without thinking about tools. There are digital tools which are coming. There are already content available in the option of massive online open courses. So today there is a real possibility that you might think that I will not generate content in class, but I will use somebody else's content, because there may be a very good professor who has put in world-class content on environmental sustainability digitally. So you can ask your student that please go through those lessons, and what we will do in class is actually discuss it. I don't need to create additional content because there is always very good content already available. In another case, you might say, no, that content is not India focused. I will take 50% of it, balance 50% content I will generate, and then we will have a discussion in class. All of these are possible because of digital tools. I already talked about large language models. Can I use large language models in class to actually expedite the learning process for my students? Then you are good, because even students would not feel that the professor doesn't know how to use artificial intelligence and technology, etc. No, use karo. Use it in class and let us understand where that fellow is going wrong and how can you make it better, right? So our discussion engagement will have to be continuously contextualized with technology and tools, and for that we also need training. There are some of us who might be very good in technology, they can come and teach the others. By the way, how much time do I have? Okay, another 5 minutes. Okay, good. I think there is very strong need for mentoring, because when faculty members join institutions, we need mentors for them to become teacher, because some of us are naturally good teachers, some of us may not be. So you do not want to dishearten someone. So we have a system of where we voluntarily ask people to come and sit in our classes, our senior faculty colleagues, so that they can tell us where we went wrong. So the faculty colleague doesn't do anything during the class, but after the class we sit with him or her and say that you can tell me what I could have done better. Maybe some student asked some questions and I got very flustered and in answering that, so he or she can point it out, saying you could have handled it slightly better. But the mentoring part becomes very important. And of course, recognition of good teachers. Why I have put that as a separate point is because, as good researchers, I think there are a lot of recognition that anyway happens. Your paper gets published in a journal, you get recognized, etc. But not many schools actually recognize good teachers. Now, recognize good teachers is a little bit tricky compared to recognizing good faculty member, good researchers, but I think there is scope for both. My third pillar is about governance. I bring up this one, I don't know, many of you may be part of this, many of you would have seen that this is the government's mission for building capacity in institutes of higher education. What impressed me, and we are one of the institutions who are actually helping the government to build this capacity, that they are focusing on institution building. So I think that is good. It is very timely that even at the highest level there is recognition that we need academic leaders. Somebody from the outside can't come and always lead an academic institution in the best possible manner, because he or she may not understand our context better. Very often, some of us who are grown up in that context, nurtured in that context, might become very good academic leaders, right? So I will not spend too much time here, but just to say that these are some of the very basics of establishing a strong governance process in the institute. Democracy, and you are all aware of that. But what does it do is that if we are able to govern ourselves, then we retain our autonomy as much as possible. Now, again, I know that autonomy is a tricky subject. There are different levels of autonomy given to us depending upon who we are. We ourselves are a national institute, so we have a lot of constraints. But at the end of the day, I think academically we need to have our autonomy, and more we are able to govern ourselves better, more autonomy people will be confident in giving it to us. Capacity building here there is no formula for it. There is a little bit of trial and error, but we are trying that inducting young faculty as early as possible into the administration. They will not be heading something, but giving them charge of some committees or being part of the member committees. And once again, a mentoring role, etc., becomes very important here. So just to summarize, that I have broadly talked about teaching, research, and academic administration. Depending upon your context, each of them will have its importance. I don't think that research will ever go down in importance. We will have to be research-led. It makes us better teachers. I don't think even teaching, but so we have to have a nice balance between all of these three. My last slide is about the kind of culture that we want to build in institutes of higher education. because culture is the one which makes us more than the sum of the parts. Culture is the one where you would love coming to work. We all have constraints. We all have our challenges. But this should be a place where you should wake up and say, wow, it's a wonderful place to be part of my institute. I feel proud about it, and I want to give my best for it. Now, what are some of the ingredients for that? We have to be research-oriented. We talked about it quite a lot. We have to be very student-focused, because this is like our future. You know, all of you would have felt this, that the joy you feel when you meet a former student who meets you at a bus stand, railway station, airport, and touches your feet or says, sir, madam, you told me something, you made my life. I said, wow, I never knew that, right? I know I am probably a very small contributor to what I have done here. But in his or her mind, we have an influence, right? So we are very powerful in that way, because we get very young people and they hold us in respect, and we can actually influence their thought process. That is the power we have. And I don't think we should ever belittle that or let it go away, despite all the challenges that we have. We have to be self-governance and collaborative. We kind of talked about that. Some of the value systems which are very critical in the Indian context, we have to be very inclusive, because we are a very diverse society. We have to be focused on our health and welfare, right? I would have spent another full day talking to you about health and fitness and mental welfare, but I think you all know that. I tell people, if you are not healthy, you will not be able to take care of anybody. So please focus on your health first. After that, the rest, right? And this also should be inculcated among our students. This is a very big issue now. We cannot but think about environmental sustainability issues in almost everything we do. You all know that we are going towards destroying our planet. It is just that it is not showing up. We are all sitting here and saying, okay, maybe it will not happen in our lifetime. But sitting in Bangalore itself, you know that this is the second successive year where we have not seen rains deep into February. You remember what happened last year. We had a water crisis. I am still very afraid. I think this year again we are going to have a water crisis. Maybe it will be worse, right? So the Bangalore of 10 years ago, where a little bit of heat will give precipitation and we will be very happy. We will have our differences. We are academicians. We are trained to find fault with each other. Moment you position a paper, my back process thought is, how can I file that? No, this data is not right. Your method is not that good. But that should not be carried to our personalities, right? So we can be fighting with each other as scholars, but we are friends, we are colleagues, and a lot more can be achieved by collaboration. I must say that we are not as collaborative as we should be. And I'm talking of my own institution. When we go for accreditation, they come and tell us that, you know, compared to an European school, you are very small in size. You have only 100 faculty members. We have 3,000 faculty members. And given 100 faculty members, you should work with each other a lot more. I see you working with others, but I don't see you folks working with each other. I think that's something that, depending upon where you are, we should all be reflecting about it. Okay, so that is where I will stop, ladies and gentlemen. If we have time, we can have some questions. Otherwise, best wishes for all of you to build very powerful institutions.
Questions?
Hello, sir. Basically, I'm Shankar Patil. I'm a research scholar. So we see that day by day now, year by year, the number of higher education institutions are increasing in India. But given the context of ranking, if we talk about, especially QS ranking, if we talk about, most of them do not come into the ranking at all. I'm not talking about the government recognition like Indian Institute of Science or ICERs or IIMs. I'm talking about the private higher education institution. So what would be the strategies, what you would suggest for a higher educational institutions which they should adapt so as to bring their standards to at least some rankings in the international level?
All of the stuff that I talked about. Focus on research, focus on teaching, focus on administration.
But when we talk about implementation, there are many challenges at the ground level, what we see at higher education institutions. So there are some challenges in terms of skills, for example. So initially we would say that we have lost brain drain, we used to call, but nowadays I would say it's a skill drain what we observe. So how would you ensure that, do you think across as well as within the institutions, collaboration would be one of the best way to tackle that?
So different things have different kind of solutions, right? For example, there is no substitute for collaboration in an institute, and that is where the administration, the leadership becomes very important, that how can one be a leader where I can make the best of what we have, right? And you are rightly, see that in our country, if I broadly say, we are not producing enough teachers, the kind of demand that is out there, we are not producing enough committed teachers. So I think that's very important to do that. That's why I stressed upon the need of collaboration, but within the institute. But then if you have the capability, then collaboration with the external world or collaboration with the industry, right? I think that there is a lot of scope even there. But finally, we must realize that there has to be a basic standard to which we all need to aspire to. And sometimes those standards may look artificial, but I think that's the bare minimum even the government that they're expecting. And in fact, now they're talking about one accreditation for every institute. And even they have told us that IITs, IIMs will also come under that, right? Yeah, maybe you guys are good, but as a nationally, there will be one accreditation for everybody. And I think that's a good move.
Yeah.
But are we investing enough to build the capacity of the faculty members? I mean, there are moves for doing that, but I think we have a long way to go.
Or is it possible that we develop some schools wherein mentors train the mentors?
Yes,
now,
you can do that.
Yeah.
You can ask the senior schools or the experienced schools to be your mentor. I mean, the government has time to time asked us to mentor new IIMs, which we have done. Yeah. Some of those practices are all about saying that when you have limited resources, how do you use your resources best? And we in India seems to be doing pretty well in that, right? At least our space mission have told us that we are able to do that. So I think we are quite oriented towards it, that how to make the best out of resources. But in academics, we seriously have a lot of challenge given the huge demand that we have out there.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Mahesh, the principal of Jain Group of Institution, Jain Evening College. When you're talking about capacity building in research, for undergraduate level, when we collaborate with the students, especially I'm talking about the premier institution like IIT, IIM, I'm talking about the college, the UG college, when you collaborate with the students, not talking about the B school also. When you collaborate with the students, and it should be published in the UGC Care, and recently UGC Care journals are, now they're removed. How to give focus on the impact of our research article in social science, when we collaborated with the students, how to show the visibility in any of the peer-reviewed journals, our students' research collaborativeness and visibility. The government has excluded the UGS Care recently, and it is impossible to develop in case of ABCD journals. It may be group 1 or group 2, but which you suggest as a collaborate with the students for research, where visibility will be focused there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think I have a very specific answer for your question. I mean, I don't know the reason why they removed the journal. I mean, that's possible. But I must tell you that even we do not collaborate with the student for our research. I mean, students can give us data. Students can help us clean the data. But finally, the responsibility of writing the paper, doing the research, also, asserting the fact or that this data is credible data, and I have followed an integral research method. Everything lies with the faculty member. So I am a little bit, probably not relating exactly to what you are saying when you are collaborating with the student. But I would say that, well, we have to start small. There are a lot of Indian journals coming from credible institutions. So even if you don't want to target some international journals, start with national level conferences, right, where you have peer review, but which may not be absolutely difficult. And I think all of us as academic institutions are also making efforts to say that let us have conferences which are more about encouraging people to become researchers. So each of these conferences have research workshops, they have paper development workshops. And I think we should have more of that, so that as a country we are able to develop the capacity and learn the language of publication. Please note that in my mind, research and publication are not the same thing. You can do fantastic research but still struggle to do publication. Because publication is also about a product. It is also about giving it some kind of shape so that it is acceptable to a set of reviewers. And that is an art. You have to kind of pick that up. And for that, you need more mentoring, more workshop, etc. I don't think whether I'm giving you an answer for your question, but I think it's always hard. I mean, it's not easy. Talk to any researcher who has published, he or she will tell you sad stories, saying how we have failed so many times and finally, we have been able to publish. Even to my own colleagues who are extremely published, they would say that they have got used to getting rejections in life. For every 3 papers they write, 2 are getting rejected and 1 getting published. That is the way we have learned, because the world is also very quirky, right? Somebody might like your paper, somebody might completely reject the same paper. That's the way we have to. But we have to build that ability to keep on trying, then one day you will suddenly feel that happens. Yes, gentleman there. Sorry? No, I'm okay standing. Yeah, standing is good. Yeah.
Principal from Jyoti Institute of Commerce and Management. Yes, teaching, learning, as you said, is supply-demand kind of a initiative view. Keeping that in mind, to this particular slide, what we have displayed here, culture. How do we build that kind of a culture which is student-focused? Because as we all know that there is enough number of teachers who want to teach and things like that, but there is lesser number of students, at least say in tier 2, tier 3 kind of an institution, where most of us, probably come from, barring the IIMs and all other things. So how do we, really make this kind of a student-focused and build that kind of a culture? If you can share some 1 or 2 tips.
Where are you seeing the problem?
The problem is there is not much of initiation even after a good amount of time spent with the students on a perspective learning habit. Say for example,
students are not paying enough attention.
Yeah, maybe that could be one reason, and enough orientation is given on a particular topic or a particular value-added course, but there is lesser interest among students. See, I would want to build that kind of a culture where students will pick up from the grassroots levels, they are trained well, they become entrepreneurs over a period of time. That kind of engaging thought I have as an institution. But the students, the one step forward, is what is actually lacking. So how do I, probably build that culture? If you can give us certain, tips on that, so that we can work back home and,
right,
motivate our students.
Yeah, when I actually talk about culture here, I have not talked about students here. I have talked about faculty members. So we are saying, how do I build a culture of being very student-focused? But you are asking a very pertinent question, which you will be surprised even we face at IIM, right? That there is this thing about students having very less attention. You might be working very hard, but students don't value that. See, part of it is what we call an occupational hazard. Okay, you have to live with it. Okay, it is like, I don't know whether you have teenager kids, but if you have a teenager kid, you will not complain about all this, because that is exactly what happens. Right? You do all your effort and still don't understand why is this creature suddenly changed so much, is no longer the child which it used to be when it has become 17 or 18. I think it's a phase, some part of it we will have to accept, but I think it's also, there's an important part of maybe not being a teacher to them always. As parents, we have this problem that we cannot not be a parent to a 17-year-old at some point of time. We always feel compelled to be a parent, right? My wife wants to be the mother, I want to be the father and all. But as a teacher, you have the option. Try it out. I don't have a simple answer for you. But I think more you try to understand that generation, maybe spend some time. It is like, I'll give you a very different example. In Bangalore, the auto fellows will always refuse you. Till one day somebody got exasperated and say, you go wherever you like, please take me. And I will give you money. So it's something like that. You tell the student, what do you want to tell me what you want me to teach so that you pay attention in class. I will teach you whatever you want. right out, sir. I have no answer for this, right?
Maybe we'll have to try in their shoes, you know.
Absolutely, right? The attention span has gone down because of digital media. This is a reality. This is also leading to a widespread depression among the younger generation, right? If I had told my father I am feeling depressed, he would have given one kick in my backside and said, go and play football, okay? Your depression will go out. Nowadays, what do? We take them to a counselor. Yeah. I don't know what is the right thing to do, right? A lot of people would say, no, your father should not have done that. Maybe counselor is the right way. I don't really know. But we know that the distractions have increased tremendously. The peer pressure on them is coming on a very, very different way, right? How I show, how many likes I get, all of these are becoming important to them, which you and I would never understand why. At some point of time, we have to say, okay, let loose some of this stuff. Let us give in and understand what they really want. It's an adjustment, sir. We have to live with it. We can't do much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. He already said this is the last question, so I can step down. I will. Is there anybody?
Sir.
No, okay. Maybe we are done. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request Professor Ashok Sess to conclude the session.
That are there. What is required now, the two components which he talked about, especially when we are talking in terms of higher education component, reflection and conceptualization are the two important factors. Okay, so far what we are teaching, now will be in terms of rote learning or the syllabus is there and etc. we complete. So engagement with the students is possible when you provide opportunity for the students to reflect on. Okay, so that's one particular factor that you can bring about, capacity building in terms of, can you learn the art of reflecting? The next part, you are talking about the building the culture, right? So that's where you can also reflect on yourself what is wrong. Okay, so why is it that I am failing to catch the attention and the needs of the students are concerned? So if that is one particular factor, if it is done, probably the purpose of the higher education or the NEP component can be possible. Thank you very much for the participation. I congratulate Professor Mukherji for a wonderful lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now may I request Professor Ashok from CES to felicitate our speaker of the day, Professor Sourav Mukherji, to give away as a token of gratitude from a PET First Grade College. Thank you so much, sir. So please take your seats. Please take your seats, sir. There is a word of thanks. It is my honor and privilege to deliver the word of thanks for this insightful plenary session at Bridging the Gap, Approaches to Capacity Building of Faculty Members in Higher Education Institutions. First and foremost, I heartfelt thanks to our distinguished and estimated speaker, Professor Sourav Mukherji, for his inspiring and thought-provoking address. Sir, your thoughts have truly set the stage for a deeper discussions and reflections. Thank you so much, sir. Let me thank Professor Ashok Sess for your final conclusion for the session. Thank you so much, sir. And then to our wonderful audience, so thank you so much for your keen participation and thoughtful questions, and also unwavering zeal and enthusiasm, and your engagement made this session all the more meaningful. And next, let me thank our beloved and dynamic principal, Dr. Parvati ma'am, and Director Academician, And lastly, sincere thanks to our organizing team. With that, we conclude this plenary, carrying forward valuable insights for the rest of the conference. Thank you once again.